Welcome to the Survivor to Thriver show with your happiness expert, Samia Bano. Are you a survivor of abuse or other trauma? Are you tired of feeling stuck, silent, and stressed all the time? This is the podcast people from all over the world join in to learn exactly how to stop suffering and start living with more inner peace and joy. Are you ready to eliminate suffering from your life and transform from a survivor to thriver? Then congratulations, you are in the right place. Let's get started. Welcome back to the Survivor to Thriver show. So in the last few episodes, I have been sharing with you my first big breakthrough on my journey to healing and inner peace, which was that first I got inspired to delve deeper into the study of religion and spirituality with the hope that it would show me the way to inner peace. And sure enough, pretty soon into the process, I began to discover teachings and concepts that were truly empowering and gave me a sense of purpose and direction for how I could move forward, and gave me really another way to exercise power and control in my life, as I not only was learning but also committed to applying what I was learning. Okay, and we'll talk more about this whole concept of learning and applying in more depth, and why it's so crucial at a later time. But today, to get back to moving on with the story and what happened next. So actually, next, in terms of the next big breakthrough that I had. So this was, I would say, within a year of my having started this journey of exploring religion and spirituality, that I read something else that again had a transformative impact on my life. And this something else this time wasn't a book. This was actually a magazine that I came across. I just found it lying around in my house. At this time, we were still living in Pakistan. And I don't know how that magazine got there, but thank God, that it was there, and I found it, and I happened to be skimming through it, and I read an article in there that changed my life. Can you guess? Any guesses on what that article might have been about? Okay, I will keep you in suspense. That was an article that was talking about child sexual abuse. Okay, and just so you can get how huge that was, if you have listened to all the episodes of this show, you will remember in the earlier episodes me talking about how I didn't even have the words to describe, to talk about, and to label what had happened to me. I had no idea. I'd never seen or heard children being sexually abused ever in my life. That was just not something that got talked about in my culture. Or maybe it was just because I was growing up in a family that kept me so sheltered and so protected, that I wasn't exposed to those things. But whatever it was, before I read this article, I never knew about the existence of child sexual abuse. And I was like, oh my God, this is what happened to me. This is the proper label for describing what happened to me. I was sexually abused as a child. And then the other most amazing thing that happened as I read that article was a sense of validation. Remember, I'd been sharing in one of the early episodes that there was a part of me that had always known there was something very wrong with what had happened. But there was another part of me that felt intensely ashamed and guilty, and thought it was my fault, right? But as I read this article, it was emphatic in its insistence that it was not my fault. It was not my fault. Going back to that concept of there is never an excuse. There is no excuse and never an invitation to rape or abuse. There's just no excuse and never an invitation to rape or abuse. And it didn't matter what I did or didn't do in those moments when I was being victimized. Doesn't matter. It was not my fault. And to have a third person, any other person, say that, to hear that message, wow. I will admit that, it wasn't something that, I just completely stopped blaming myself in the aftermath of reading this article. No, I continue to struggle with guilt and shame. But now, when that other part of me, that knew there was something wrong, that it wasn't my fault, spoke up, it had more power and strength and confidence in it, in its voice, in its message of it wasn't my fault, because it had the sense of validation, this memory of this validation and greater understanding of what had happened to support it, right? So it was really, really life-changing to receive that validation. And then again, the hope of healing, right? Because the other thing that article really focused on was sharing that there was a way to heal and to get help, and that there were people who knew how to help me heal and get help. Okay? And those people were called psychologists. I was, again, in my culture, in India, in Pakistan, the idea of psychologists and all, very foreign concept. I didn't even really, at that time, fully understand what a psychologist did, or how you became a psychologist, or why anyone would go to a psychologist. Right? It's just not something that was part of our culture and our knowing. So, for me, these were all really new revelations. Oh my God. It's called child sexual abuse. It's not my fault. There's people who understand what happened, how it's impacting me, and they can help me heal. And there is a name not only for what happened, but there's a name for the people who can help me, and they're called psychologists. And I was like, okay, well, you know what? Look, I was still too scared. I was still very much in the grip of the fear that I had been struggling with for the last 6-7 years now. I was still, like I said, not immediately able to come out of the sense of shame and guilt that I'd been struggling with for the past 6 and 7 years. Right? That's just not realistic. That's just not going to happen. But at the same time, I had another flame of hope lit within me that, maybe one day, even if not immediately, I could maybe go and get this help that I needed from a psychologist, connect with it. I had no idea how I'd get myself to a psychologist. And actually what happened is pretty soon after, my reading this article, I actually made a decision. I was like, you know what? I don't know when and how I might get myself to a psychologist to get help. At that time, I still thought I'd never be able to tell anyone about what had happened. So I was like, I don't know, even if I find a psychologist, I may not be able to tell them. I don't think I'd be able to tell them about what had actually happened to me. So they still might not be able to help me. So the best solution that I came up with then was, oh, you know what? I must become a psychologist myself and learn everything for myself, and then I can help myself. So that was my plan. And again, I living in Pakistan, I didn't know how I was going to make it happen, because in my school, and all, we didn't learn psychology. Psychology wasn't the subject that was offered. Even in college, I didn't know if I could go to college. At that point in time, I didn't know if my family would be able to afford it, and I didn't know which colleges even might teach a subject like psychology. I just didn't know any of that information. But this was, again, the best idea that I had at that time, and I decided to just commit to it and do what I could to help me move forward with it. And this is a really amazing thing, is that once you commit to something, then you begin to see all these doorways and windows open up for you and before you that will help you to move more and more towards that goal, towards truly living into that commitment, if you so choose. And sure enough, once I had made this decision and this commitment, the next time I was out with my family, we ended up in it was, I think, the British Embassy. Yeah, it was the British Embassy in Pakistan. And over there they had a library. And of course, me being the bookworm that I was, I made a straight beeline for the library in the British Embassy while the rest of my family was doing whatever they were doing in there. And I found a book on, it was a Psychology 101, Introduction to Psychology. And they allowed me to check that book out. So there's just these little miracles, that began to, that begin to appear. And I was just thank you, God. This is a sign that, again, I'm heading in the right direction and I need to keep going. It was just so exciting. Okay, so We're almost 15 minutes in again. So I'm going to go ahead, wrap up the show right here for today, and we will pick up where we left off tomorrow. And in the meanwhile, remember to connect with me. I love your feedback and your comments. Go to www.academyofthriving.com. Find our contact us page there, and you'll be able to connect with me. Until tomorrow, I wish you lots of peace and joy.